Welcome to the Cybersecurity Podcast. It's the Cybersecurity Podcast with a little extra BS. I'm Andrew Nuxel.
And I'm Nathaniel Vick. And today we're going to talk about some cyber breaches, the Snowflake breach. And then we're going to also pivot and talk about some AI tools.
That's right. Yeah, so let's just get right to it, Nathaniel. There's been a lot of activity on the breach front.
Sure
Seems like between every episode we have, there's a lot of activity on the breach front, but several big ones. I think the biggest of which, and the one that just, the more you hear about it, the more you learn about it, is just going to become bigger and bigger, is the Snowflake breach. They a huge company in terms of big name customers. So I think many people probably heard in the media about the Ticketmaster breach that occurred recently. That was part of the Snowflake breach. Ticketmaster is a customer of Snowflake. Same with Pure Storage. There are a number of very recognizable large companies with a lot of data that's been impacted as part of this.
Sure is. Almost 100, over 100, 165, it sounds like, companies affected. And it sounds like 500 million people may have their information somehow compromised. So pretty big deal in the terms of how many customers it's affecting. And just how it started, too, is kind of interesting. It seemed to target a few different ways, but even affecting some accounts that didn't have multi-factor authentication set up. So kind of interesting how that started. Why people still don't use multi-factor authentication. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's something that it makes you question their entire security posture when it's something so simple.
Yes.
And, first, I guess, on one hand, shouldn't a vendor as large and complex as Snowflake, although, admittedly, they're not a decades-old company. They're relatively new. But that said, if they're handling so much data on behalf of customers, they share some of the responsibility in enforcing two-factor authentication, or at a minimum, strongly recommending it, encouraging their customers to utilize it. Obviously, some of the customers were utilizing it. It was available, but it just seems really strange that in today's day and age, that's even an option. It's like people hate two-factor authentication because it's not very convenient, but man, the amount of additional protection you get if it's employed properly far outweighs the 15 seconds of waiting for a text message to come through, or logging into your authenticator app to pull a code or what have you. It just seems like, especially from a business perspective, let alone personal accounts, it's crazy that two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication isn't used more extensively than it currently is.
I totally agree. It seems like there's still certain apps that don't have an easily accessible two-factor authentication setup. It's not even really prompted. Now, Google's done a really great job with some of their prompts to make sure you're setting up two-factor authentication. A lot of banks just have it by default automatically set up. I think the banks is a good one to watch because they're one of the most targeted industries. And so seeing that they're really mandating it for every account setup really should be where industry is headed, that we're just mandating it. It's not even an option.
Yeah.
Make sure we have that protected.
So often it seems like, though, you'll get a notice that, it's time to reset your password and then you log in, and all of a sudden that place will be enforcing multi-factor authentication. Lots of times they didn't even have it as an option before, but then you kind of peel the onion, and later you'll hear, this provider was breached.
Yeah.
Now they're employing two-factor authentication.
That's usually the response, not the proactive measure. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very much a reactive versus proactive approach, and still very common. And, I'm not trying to minimize the difficulty, but both from an organization that's employing multi-factor authentication or an individual that's trying to set up multi-factor authentication on an account. Neither one is terribly difficult when you look at it. It's surprisingly easy if you have the right partner to introduce multi-factor authentication into an enterprise or as part of your ecosystem. So it's hard to justify putting it off or procrastinating employment of that strategy.
Yeah, it really is. And it kind of leads into targeting the easy, like hackers are going to target the easiest targets. And so that's really the low hanging fruit. You got to be able to make sure that you get rid of the low hanging fruit so that you're not a target and you make your company organization a lowest profile as you can. So hackers, you're not the first company or organization that hackers are going to approach, which kind of leads into the other hack or breach we were going to talk about, which is the Ascension cyber attack. Another kind of low hanging fruit too, although somewhat harder to stop. It sounds like somebody downloaded a malicious file accidentally.
Yeah, I think one of the most common threat vectors, inadvertent breach in this case, or many times it's just a misconfiguration that allows for it, or not enforcing good security policies on users' machines, allowing for too much privilege. But yeah, it's this one has a lot of troublesome things about it. One, there's a massive number of people that could be impacted. Secondly, and we're seeing this a lot, it seems like more recently, at first, and I don't know if they've changed their stance, but Ascension was pretty steadfast in downplaying, one, that the breach ever even happened, and then two, the severity of it. So that's definitely a big concern for this one.
Yeah, and that does seem to be they're trying to get ahead of it, which I understand, trying to make it less of an incident. Sounds like they were trying to minimize where the hacker got access. They had 25,000 servers, only had access to a few, but still, it's a breach is a breach, and yeah, it's kind of interesting how this communication seems to be messed up. When an organization gets breached, should have a plan in place to make sure they can respond effectively and communicate what needs to be communicated.
Right. There needs to be an instant response plan. There needs to be a communication chain internally, and these situations need to be handled with sensitivity, obviously, but also with integrity, and that's really troubling to me. I keep on coming back to it, but it's gone so far as now the SEC and federal government have started to implement different types of requirements around breach notification. It hasn't really made it out to all private sector companies or on a widespread basis, but it's unfortunate that it even needs to be that way, because I know of at least a few breaches that I've been involved with that happened before these went in place. I've done my own research and know that, hey, I had an account at such and such business, and I know that they were breached.
Yeah.
Never received so much as an email, let alone a paper copy in the mail or something like that. It's just almost like we'll forget it. And a lot of times, we've joked about this in the past. It's super frustrating. The end result of a lot of these is going to be free credit monitoring for the next 12 months. Great. You gave all my information away, but the way that you can fix it is going to be.
And that really doesn't fix the issue either. It's just like it piles it onto another company.
It's barely monitoring, right? I mean, because that just, in many regards, just what's the word I'm looking for? Redistributes the amount of effort it takes to troubleshoot and investigate these things to the person that was impacted. So now I have to sign up for an account, have to share my information with another organization, which in a lot of cases already has stolen or aggregated enough data from people that they probably know more about me than I do. And then I have to, look out for emails. I have to log in. I have to check and see what they're saying. They're transferring. That was the word I was looking for with my wordsmith mind. They're transferring all of the responsibility to the customers that their negligence impacted. And it's super frustrating. Really like to see that change. Transitioning away from breaches to the other topic we're going to talk about, and that's some of the trends we're seeing around artificial intelligence and AI tools within security in particular. But anything interesting that you've been seeing from your side lately?
Well, it seems like a lot of security companies are now adding an AI element to their tool set. So making sure that they keep up with all of each other and adding, whether it's an add-on or some sort of service that they can leverage some of these open AI or whatever it may be.
And in many cases, they're taking an offering or some sort of service that they already had within their ecosystem and rebranding it as AI.
That's true too, yeah.
Which is kind of funny. There are a few companies that I caught on. All of a sudden, it says, perform this search with AI, and it's the exact same type of results as it was before. On the other hand, there are, even on just basic web searches, or if you've shopped on Amazon, among other sites, you'll notice if you scroll down to reviews, a lot of times there's a much more accurate and concise summary around what people have been saying in reviews, or you do a search and it aggregates some of the most common results and points you right to where it thinks you want to go. And
I love
that's helpful, but
really extremely helpful. It's just summarize content very quickly.
Yeah.
And I think that's where maybe as a security tool right now, at least is helpful if you have a large amount of data, being able to aggregate that in a way and summarize it clearly. See trends. I mean, you could see a lot of, I think that's really the power of AI right now too, is generating. We don't have unlimited resources as security teams. So making sure we can leverage it, do a lot of the dirty work. And that's where AI can definitely serve a purpose.
Yeah, I've seen also a lot of progress and improvements around particularly email security, but endpoint security in general, where a lot of times AI functionality is being used to identify some sort of data, heuristics, whatever, to say, okay, what I'm seeing right here is troubling. And then I think the best implementation of this I've seen, I won't mention the company in particular, but they take that data. You can click on the link where it says why it thinks it's potentially a security related issue, and it spells it all out in plain English. So at the same time, it's protecting users and at least, hopefully encouraging them to take a step back and think a little bit longer about what's happening, but also educating them as to what to look for in the future. And it might translate over to personal accounts or communications and so on. So that's a really good approach. I like the approach of not just saying, oh, you can't do this, denying service or shutting something down, and instead saying, you shouldn't do this. Here's 14 reasons why this is a bad idea. You need to understand it. Whether it be, aggregating email data and saying, hey, this looks like it might have information of a financial nature. Are you sure that this is a person you want to be discussing that with? To, just general internet activity and warning of potentially serious behavior.
Definitely. The whole log review thing is just a huge deal, because a lot of time it's hard as a security researcher unless you have a lot of data points and maybe you have your logs that you review or however you do threat hunting. There's just so much data, and it's just increasing the amount of applications you have, the amount of data sources and endpoints that you're leveraging and using. And so just as a log aggregation tool and analyzing what you're seeing, extremely valuable. And I think could be a game changer. And the hackers, it seems like, have been winning. What do we need to do to stop that? It just doesn't seem like we hear a lot of great stories out there where a breach was caught and nothing happened. Maybe we just need to highlight those stories too, more than we do. And maybe that's what this tool could do, or these tools can do with AI, is make that breach count go down. That would be awesome.
On the good news note, not to change the subject unexpectedly, but there was a recent report of government retrieving, I believe it was over 500 different encryption keys for various types of malware that had been propagated out, and giving those out freely so that people could unencrypt data from ransomware attacks and stuff. So that's good news. Yeah.
That's a good news. Yeah, maybe too we can add to our breach section a good news breach section where we talk about the opposite, where organizations are also responding to and stopping these threats. So that's good to hear. Do you have any plans for the next couple of weeks in the summer?
Just happy that summer is here. My favorite time of year. As long as I have access to an air conditioner, I want it hot, and just hoping to get outdoors, get on the lake, and enjoy our lovely North Carolina weather. What about yourself?
Yeah, same here. Enjoying the summer and love to get outside some more. So, yeah, really excited for summer.
Same.
Well, thanks everyone for this podcast, and please let us know if you have any suggestions as we improve, and keep cyber safe out there.
Take care, everyone. Thanks.